Hello everyone, very warm welcome. I'm sure all of you are having a great time at reInvent. And I'm pleased to welcome Joshua Luke, Chief Technology Officer of SWBC. Please join me in welcoming him as he has led through the entire modernization journey within SWBC, the cloud. Not only that, as part of that, he has been very instrumental in setting up the DevOps culture of working and been instrumental in new ways of innovation for digitizing the payment platforms as SWBC. Without further ado, I give you Josh Luke. Over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Adi. It's a pleasure to be here today, and really glad to speak to SWBC's cloud journey and how TCS has partnered with us to help us along in that journey. So I guess we'll first start with an overview of SWBC. A lot of you might not know who SWBC is. So we are a well-capitalized, privately held company. We are headquartered out of San Antonio, Texas. We have over 2,400 employees nationwide. We've been servicing the financial services industry for over 45 years, and we're currently supporting over 1,400 financial institution clients today. SWBC as a company has won many Great Places to Work For awards in Texas, and the most recent being this past year. And our owners are extremely active in the local communities there in San Antonio. And they donate 10% of their net profit proceeds on an annual basis to charities. SWBC is a very diverse company. They actually have 12 different business units servicing different verticals and industries. The product we're going to speak to today, though, is within our financial institutions group. And within the FIG group, we actually support many different service offerings, SaaS offerings, and products to our financial institution clients. But today, if you want to learn more about those, I'll be happy to speak with you afterwards. But today we're going to focus on the SWBC Payments product. And so within that product space, we actually offer financial solutions for debt repayment and new account origination solutions through various channels, through interactive voice, B2B channels for teller-initiated payments, B2C channels for member-initiated payments, and we also offer direct web service integrations. And from that, we also integrate back into the banking cores as well, so we can see the members can see their payments reflected on their accounts. So with this system, we were confronted from the product owner and asked to build a new integration in the system. And he wanted it to be extremely scalable to handle the new increased expected workloads of the system. But he also wanted it to seamlessly integrate with our legacy capabilities. So we were faced with the decision of, do we build this into our new cloud strategy and build cloud native, or do we build it into our existing legacy system? So just a brief overview of how we got here. And we started our cloud journey in Q4 of 2019. With a lift and shift model for our existing services as part of a data center consolidation effort. And with that, we concluded our last workload migration in the Q4 of 2020. And when that was concluded, we started looking at different ways that we could start utilizing the cloud even further. We saw the benefits there of serverless offerings, being able to use microservice architectures to extend our services even further. And so we wanted our development teams to focus more on the things that built our business and were important to our business versus things like logging, monitoring, things of that nature, things that AWS made easy integratable to your systems. So we knew at the outset we kind of were going to go the direction of cloud native. So the question was now, do we use our internal resources to do that, or do we need to seek help with a partner? And in that discovery, it became clear we were not going to be able to do that internally because we just didn't have the capacity to do it. We had internal teams working on little proof of concepts and looking at ways that we would do the integrations, but we just weren't fully there to scale to that capacity. And so we put it out on RFP for that process, and TCS won that RFP process. And there are several reasons for that. One, we were already integrated with them in several other aspects, and so they were familiar with how we worked, our business, and we've been successful in those capacities. Also, through the RFP response, they showed a clear understanding of the problem we were trying to solve, and they were very capable of integrating to the change that we needed. And then they also presented an architecture that was very similar to the way that we had proposed if we were going to build it internally ourselves. So there wasn't a big gap to fill there. They brought forth their cloud COE and their payment COE, so they brought forth specific knowledge to the spaces that we needed. And so it was very clear that they were going to be capable of helping us in our journey. And so with that, yeah, that's fine. So with that, we decided that we were going cloud native with the integration. So other business drivers were, we had limited customization of client onboarding in the existing legacy system. And because of that, the business teams had to tailor their processes to the existing system and versus the system building out to support their needs. We also had a longer time to market to introduce new features. And this was because it's a legacy monolith application with a centralized database where we have different services, databases, batch processes, everything communicating to a centralized database. And so our teams had scaled to the point where we had to have more than one Scrum team operating on the system. And when you have that and you're all operating on the same code base to the same centralized data store, you have to sync and merge those changes and introduce risks and other aspects to the system. And then you have to worry about regression testing the entire system, regardless of the size of the change. The entire system has to be regression tested for those pieces. And then we had integration with other in-house IT systems, which was becoming cumbersome. And we have very highly skilled individuals in those areas, but they work in a different manner than we do. We work in a Scrum process with time-box deliverables. They work in an ITIL process supporting 12 different business units. How do you align our timelines to theirs? And sometimes we're coordinating across 5 different teams to try to make those changes. And so coordinating 5 different teams' timelines into yours can be a cumbersome process. And then we also had growing licensing costs. We're predominantly .NET shop, so traditionally, obviously, we have Windows Server allocations. We use Microsoft SQL Server as our primary data store today. So we want to seek to how we can lower those costs. And then we also had higher maintenance overhead. This is a legacy system built with several different data access layers, several different business logic layers. The technical debt within the system was real. So we knew we wanted to move forward with the new technology stack. So let's talk about the solution. We used a lot of AWS components in the system and with purpose. So we knew going in that we wanted to use AWS serverless architecture. So for our APIs, we decided to go with ECS on AWS Fargate. To expose those APIs, we wanted to use API Gateway. For our batch components, we decided AWS Batch and Lambda would be great components to use for those. And for our messaging protocols, we wanted to use SNS and SQS, all built-in tools that work seamlessly together in AWS. With this, we also wanted to ensure that we had scaling capacities. We wanted not only to meet our highest demand, but to scale down when we weren't using it. Pay for what you use. It's really important to us to have that cost savings. So we use those scaling capacities of Lambda and Fargate into that system. And obviously the almost infinite capabilities of SNS and SQS. Just as important to us was how we could manage our infrastructure as code. We really had to have a model going forward where we didn't have to coordinate with 5 different teams to get a release out the door. So we wanted to package our releases with our code, with our infrastructure, so that we could deploy those as a unit. And so for that, we use CloudFormation templating, and we use the SAM, serverless application model as well. Because we moved to microservices, it was really important that we had parallel asynchronous processing of messages. Because microservice, when you look at how you work within microservices architecture, they all have their own data model. So you're no longer communicating with a centralized data source. In that, you need to ensure that you can process changes across those data sources to each of the individual microservice. They're working independently, but you still have to have those updates. So how do you do that effectively is through messaging. So we use SNS to issue topic notifications to the service when a change occurs. We process a message on an SQS event queue. And we have Lambda that goes and executes that to update the internal data store of the microservice. It was really important data model change for us. Along with that, we have to worry about eventual consistency is really important. You have to make sure that message gets processed. So retry capabilities have to be built in. as well as being able to process once it gets to a dead letter queue. Item potency is just as important, especially in a payment system. I need to be able to process a message once and only once. So all these things were built into the architecture of the system and key components. We also wanted to move to event-driven processing. And this was because most of our batch processing today was all centered around schedules. We might have a schedule where someone drops a file to us at 8 a.m., but they might be late and we don't get it till 12 p.m. I now have to engage our operations admins to go onto the server, execute the process because it's no longer on schedule. Moving to event-driven processing, the file now goes to an S3 bucket. I can issue an SNS topic notification, goes to a queue, and then Lambda process that queue message and process the document. So a lot more flexibility in the system, having to engage less teams to really help and support the overall architecture. And last but certainly not least, we are a highly regulated process. We also are under PCI guidelines and standards. We had to ensure this solution would be secure. So with that, we used a lot of in-house AWS technologies to help with that. Identity Access Manager, Secrets Manager, Certificate Manager, Key Management Service, just to name a few. But they provide these. We still have to secure them to our needs. And with that, we have a lot of scanning capabilities. We need to ensure they meet our CIS benchmark standards. And we saw great results from that. Very little had to come out and had to be adjusted from those changes from the final solution. And then further, we actually went with a third-party security assessment firm to actually to do a code assessment as well. We wanted to ensure we were secure from both the code front and the infrastructure side. So we got it from both sides, and TCS did a tremendous job in ensuring those things were in place. So the benefits we realized from the solution were we reduced time taken for business processes. We were able to custom build to their needs. Definitely something that has improved our relationship with the business. We have improved capacity to launch features. Our developers are now focused on the things that are important to the business and not the infrastructure components. We have reduced server management overhead. I'm not having to worry. We're using those serverless components from Fargate and Lambda. We established those auto-scaling features. And then we're also automated our infrastructure. So all that is to say it was a very successful outcome for SWBC, and thank you for the partnership with TCS. It's been a tremendous journey.
Thank you, Josh. It's been a great partnership. And in fact, TCS has been privileged to be part of this journey with SWBC. As we all know, the last 2 years has seen all of us work remotely. The TCS SPWS model helped all the teams of SWBC work seamlessly across the globe remotely, adhering to the agile way of working, at the same time with all the stringent compliance and regulatory implications of such a modernization journey. Another thing which I'd like to highlight is, as part of this entire evolution, as Josh mentioned, this is a journey which was new for SWBC as well. And it meant that we needed to make sure that we could get the best of automation and ability to be able to iterate newer capabilities quite fast. So using the AWS SAM model, TCS implemented an accelerator which could actually free up 90% of the developers' times to be able to automatically insert AWS headers into the application codes, thereby looking at much quicker iterations in a much more integrated way. The last thing that I'd like to highlight is what really helped us come to bear in this partnership was the entire payment center of excellence. Josh alluded to it, but a rich domain and contextual knowledge of banking financial services in TCS pulled all the might together to be able to make ourselves relevant in this journey with SWBC. So thank you again, Josh, for the wonderful partnership and to your teams, and we look forward to a great journey ahead. I hope all of you had a great inspiration from the journey we have had together, and we look forward to partnering in the future as we come together. Thank you.
Thank you.